There is a quiet moment that comes for many people somewhere after 60. You reach for something on a high shelf, and your arm does not extend quite as far as it used to. You recover from a minor illness, and it takes a few extra days to feel like yourself again. You notice that your mind, still sharp, occasionally takes a little longer to retrieve a name or a word. These moments are easy to dismiss as simply aging, as the inevitable passage of time making its mark. But here is what most people never realize. Many of the changes we attribute to aging are not caused by time itself. They are caused by the cumulative effect of small, repeated choices that slowly shift the body away from its natural state of balance. And the most surprising part is that some of the choices we make with the best intentions, believing they support our health, are actually accelerating the very declines we hope to avoid. This is not about dramatic mistakes or obvious dangers. It is about the subtle difference between foods and habits that genuinely nourish the body and those that quietly undermine it. Over decades, that difference accumulates into the gap between a later life of gradual decline and one of maintained strength and clarity. In the next hour, we will explore what that gap looks like, how it forms, and most importantly, how understanding it changes everything about the way we approach the second half of life. You are listening to the Longevity Library, where we archive the wisdom of healthy aging. The art of choosing well. How daily decisions shape the length and quality of life. There is a question that becomes more interesting with each passing year. It is not about how to stop the clock or reverse the passage of time. Those are distractions, not possibilities. The more useful question is this. Among people who live well into their later years with clarity, mobility, and vitality, what patterns appear in their daily lives? What do they do differently? Not in dramatic bursts of transformation, but in the quiet accumulation of ordinary days. This is not a question about genetics alone, though genes certainly play a role. It is not about supplements or medical breakthroughs, though those have their place. The most consistent patterns among people who age well are far simpler and far more accessible. They involve choices made multiple times each day, choices about food, movement, rest, and connection. These choices do not produce dramatic results overnight, but over decades, they shape the trajectory of a life. The purpose of this exploration is to understand those patterns, not as a list of rules to follow, but as a way of seeing the relationship between small decisions and large outcomes. When you understand why certain choices support longevity and others undermine it, you no longer need to memorize rules. You simply see the world more clearly, and better choices become natural. The body as a cumulative record. Every human body keeps a record. It does not use paper or digital files. It uses cells and tissues, molecules and electrical signals. Every meal you have ever eaten has contributed to the current state of your body. Every night of sleep, every walk taken or not taken, every moment of stress or ease, all of it has been recorded in the architecture of your physiology. This sounds like a burden, but it is actually a source of hope. If the body only recorded recent events, then past choices would permanently determine your future. But the body is constantly updating its record. Old patterns can be overwritten by new ones. Cells that were damaged can be replaced. Systems that have fallen out of balance can be restored. The key insight from longevity research is that the body responds to consistent signals more powerfully than to occasional dramatic interventions. A single day of perfect eating does nothing. A year of reasonably good eating transforms health. A single intense workout provides temporary benefit. Years of regular movement reshape the entire cardiovascular and musculoskeletal systems. This is why the concept of choosing well matters so much. Not because any single choice carries enormous weight, but because choices compound. They accumulate. They become the raw material from which your future body will be built. Understanding the aging process in plain terms. Before examining specific strategies, it helps to have a simple framework for understanding what aging actually is at the level of cells and systems. Aging is not a single process, but a collection of changes that occur simultaneously. At the most basic level, cells accumulate damage over time. This damage comes from multiple sources. Normal energy production creates byproducts that can harm cellular components. Environmental exposures introduce compounds the body must manage. Errors occur when cells divide and replicate. Over decades, this damage accumulates faster than the body's repair systems can address it. At the same time, certain systems become less efficient. The mitochondria that produce energy in your cells may decline in number and function. The telomeres that protect your chromosomes shorten with each cell division. The immune system becomes less precise, sometimes failing to recognize threats it once handled easily. Hormonal signals change. The messages that coordinate activity between organs shift in ways that affect metabolism, muscle maintenance, and recovery. Blood vessels gradually lose some of their youthful flexibility. Bones may become less dense. Muscles may shrink if not regularly challenged. This description might sound like decline is inevitable, and in one sense it is. Everyone ages, but the rate at which these changes occur varies enormously between individuals. Two people of the same chronological age can have bodies that function as if decades apart. This gap is not primarily determined by genes. It is determined by the cumulative effect of daily choices. The factors that accelerate aging are well understood. Chronic inflammation, insulin resistance, oxidative stress, sedentary behavior, poor sleep, social isolation. Each of these speeds up the processes described above. The factors that slow aging are equally well understood. Regular movement, balanced nutrition, restorative sleep, meaningful connection, and purposeful engagement all support the body's natural maintenance systems. Understanding this framework allows you to see why specific strategies matter. You are not guessing about what might help. You are supporting systems that are known to influence the rate at which the body changes over time. The first principle, movement as maintenance. If there is a single most powerful strategy for maintaining function throughout life, it is regular movement. This is not about athletic performance or achieving fitness goals. It is about sending the body consistent signals that it needs to maintain its capabilities. Muscle tissue provides a clear example. Muscle is metabolically active. It requires energy to maintain. The body makes constant calculations about how much muscle to keep. If you regularly challenge your muscles through resistance or endurance activities, the body receives signals that this tissue is needed. It allocates resources to maintain it. If you are sedentary for long periods, the body interprets muscle as unnecessary and gradually reduces it. This principle extends far beyond muscles. Bones respond to the forces placed on them. Weight-bearing activity signals that bone density should be preserved. Without this signal, bones become less dense over time. Joints require movement to maintain lubrication and the health of cartilage. The cardiovascular system needs regular challenges to preserve the flexibility of blood vessels and the efficiency of the heart. Balance is another capability that follows the use it or lose it principle. The complex systems that keep you upright, sensory input from your feet and joints, processing in your brain, rapid adjustments from muscles, all require regular practice. People who move in varied ways throughout life maintain balance longer than those who become sedentary. The type of movement matters less than the consistency. Walking, gardening, swimming, dancing, lifting objects, stretching, climbing stairs, all of these count. The key is regularity. Movement should be distributed throughout the day and throughout the week. not concentrated into a single intense session followed by days of inactivity. For people in later decades, the goal of movement shifts from performance to preservation. You are not trying to set records. You are trying to maintain the capacity to live independently, to move without pain, to recover from minor challenges. Every time you move, you are telling your body that these capabilities matter, and your body responds by maintaining them. The second principle, metabolic balance and energy management. Metabolism is the process by which your body converts food into energy and building blocks. It is not a single system, but a collection of interconnected processes that manage how fuel is used, stored, and released. Maintaining metabolic balance is central to longevity because metabolic disturbances accelerate nearly every aspect of aging. The most common metabolic challenge in modern life is insulin resistance. This condition develops when cells become less responsive to insulin, the hormone that signals them to take up glucose from the bloodstream. When cells ignore this signal, the pancreas produces more insulin to compensate. High insulin levels then promote fat storage, inflammation, and further resistance. Over years, this cycle leads to weight gain, particularly around the abdomen. It raises triglycerides and lowers protective HDL cholesterol. It contributes to blood pressure increases. It creates an internal environment that accelerates damage to blood vessels and organs. The opposite of insulin resistance is insulin sensitivity. When cells respond well to insulin, glucose enters them efficiently. Blood sugar remains stable. Insulin levels stay moderate. The body burns fat more readily between meals. This metabolic state is associated with lower rates of nearly every age-related condition. What determines whether you develop insulin resistance or maintain sensitivity? The primary factors are diet composition, meal timing, physical activity, and body composition. Diets high in refined carbohydrates and added sugars repeatedly spike blood glucose, forcing high insulin release. Over time, this pattern promotes resistance. Diets centered on whole foods with fiber, protein, and healthy fats produce more moderate glucose responses. Physical activity dramatically improves insulin sensitivity. Muscle tissue that has been recently used takes up glucose without requiring as much insulin. This is one reason why regular movement protects metabolic health regardless of what you eat. Body composition matters because fat tissue, particularly around internal organs, releases compounds that promote insulin resistance. Maintaining muscle and managing fat accumulation supports metabolic function. For people interested in longevity, metabolic health is not about weight loss for appearance. It is about maintaining the internal environment that allows cells to function optimally. Every meal is an opportunity to either support metabolic balance or challenge it. Over decades, the cumulative effect of these choices shapes the trajectory of aging. The third principle, nutritional patterns that support longevity. Nutrition is the most discussed aspect of health, and also the most confusing. Advice changes constantly. What was recommended 5 years ago is now questioned. Studies seem to contradict each other. In this confusion, it is easy to lose sight of what is actually known. Decades of research on populations with high rates of healthy aging reveal consistent patterns. These patterns are not about specific superfoods or exact nutrient ratios. They are about overall dietary patterns that have stood the test of time. The first pattern is that diets centered on whole foods consistently outperform those built around processed products. Whole foods, vegetables, fruits, legumes, whole grains, nuts, seeds, fish, and modest amounts of meat and dairy provide complex mixtures of nutrients that work together. Processed foods tend to deliver concentrated calories with fewer accompanying nutrients and more additives that may stress metabolic systems. The second pattern is that plant foods appear in abundance in nearly every population with high rates of healthy aging. This does not mean everyone must become vegetarian. It means that vegetables, fruits, legumes, and other plant foods should form the foundation of meals, with other foods added in smaller quantities. The third pattern involves fat quality, not fat quantity. Traditional diets that support longevity include fats from olives, nuts, seeds, and fish. They limit fats from industrial seed oils and highly processed sources. The ratio of different types of fats matters more than the total amount. The fourth pattern is about protein distribution. Adequate protein throughout life supports muscle maintenance, which becomes increasingly important in later decades. Spreading protein across meals rather than concentrating it in one meal appears to support better muscle preservation. The fifth pattern involves eating patterns that allow periods without food. Most traditional cultures naturally included overnight fasts between dinner and breakfast. Some also had periods of lower food intake. These breaks from constant eating allow metabolic systems to rest and support cellular cleanup processes. When applied to nuts specifically, these patterns explain why some nuts support health while others undermine it. Nuts in their whole form provide healthy fats, fiber, protein, and numerous micronutrients. They fit perfectly into the pattern of whole foods that support metabolic health. But when nuts are coated in sugar, roasted in low-quality oils, or loaded with salt, they become processed foods that challenge the very systems they might otherwise support. The difference is not in the nut itself. It is in what has been added to it. A handful of raw almonds supports insulin sensitivity, provides vitamin E for blood vessel protection, and delivers magnesium for blood pressure regulation. A handful of honey-roasted almonds spikes blood glucose, adds inflammatory oils, and contributes to the very metabolic disturbances that accelerate aging. This distinction applies broadly. The same food in its whole form can support health, while its processed version undermines it. Recognizing this pattern allows you to make choices based on principles rather than memorized rules. The fourth principle: inflammation as the common thread. Inflammation is a word that appears constantly in health discussions, often without clear explanation. Understanding what inflammation actually is helps explain why it matters so much for longevity. Inflammation is the body's response to harm. When cells are damaged, when pathogens invade, when irritants are present, the immune system responds by sending signals that increase blood flow, recruit immune cells, and begin repair processes. This acute inflammation is essential for survival. Without it, minor injuries would become infected and small threats would escalate. The problem arises when inflammation becomes chronic. Instead of a targeted response that resolves when the threat passes, the body remains in a state of low-grade inflammation continuously. This chronic inflammation damages healthy tissues, promotes changes in blood vessels, and contributes to insulin resistance. What drives chronic inflammation? Multiple factors contribute. Excess body fat, particularly around internal organs, releases inflammatory compounds. Poor diet, especially one high in refined carbohydrates and industrial oils, promotes inflammation. Sedentary behavior allows inflammatory signals to accumulate. Chronic stress and poor sleep also contribute. The foods that support longevity tend to be anti-inflammatory. They provide compounds that help regulate the immune response and reduce oxidative stress. Vegetables and fruits supply antioxidants that neutralize the damaging molecules produced during inflammation. Fish provides omega-3 fats that serve as precursors for anti-inflammatory signals. Fiber feeds gut bacteria that produce compounds with anti-inflammatory effects. The foods that undermine longevity tend to be pro-inflammatory. Refined carbohydrates spike blood sugar and insulin, promoting inflammatory pathways. Industrial seed oils shift the balance of fats toward inflammation. Excess alcohol irritates tissues and stresses the liver. Added sugars directly promote inflammatory signaling. Nuts in their whole form are generally anti-inflammatory. Their healthy fats, antioxidants, and fiber all support regulation of inflammation. But processed nuts with added sugars, low-quality oils, and excess salt shift toward the pro-inflammatory category. They deliver the inflammatory triggers without the balancing compounds. This framework explains why the same food can be either helpful or harmful depending on its preparation. The nut itself is not the determining factor. What matters is the total package of compounds that enters your body. The fifth principle, the nervous system and stress regulation. The nervous system connects everything. It monitors conditions inside and outside the body. It coordinates responses to challenges. It regulates the balance between activity and rest. How well this system functions influences every aspect of aging. The autonomic nervous system has two main branches. The sympathetic branch prepares the body for action. It increases heart rate, redirects blood to muscles, releases stress hormones, and sharpens focus. This response is essential for meeting challenges, but it is meant to be temporary. When the challenge passes, the parasympathetic branch should restore calm, slow heart rate, direct energy toward digestion and repair, and allow the body to recover. Problems arise when the sympathetic branch remains active too much of the time. The same body that benefits from good nutrition and regular movement also requires periods of genuine rest. Without this rest, the benefits of other choices are diminished. The sixth principle, connection and purpose. Humans evolved to live in groups. Throughout the vast majority of our history, survival depended on cooperation, communication, and mutual support. The nervous system developed expecting regular social contact. Isolation was dangerous, a signal that something was wrong. Modern life has changed this. Many people live alone or far from family. Work may not provide meaningful social connection. Communities have fragmented. The result is that social isolation has become common, particularly in later decades. Research consistently shows that social connection is one of the strongest predictors of longevity. People with strong social ties live longer, healthier lives than those who are isolated. This effect is not small. It rivals the impact of smoking or physical inactivity. Multiple mechanisms explain this connection. Social support buffers the effects of stress. Having people to talk with, rely on, and share experiences with calms the nervous system. Social engagement provides cognitive stimulation that helps maintain mental function. Being needed by others gives life meaning and purpose, which motivates self-care and healthy behaviors. Purpose itself appears to have protective effects. People who feel their lives have meaning, who have reasons to get up in the morning, who contribute to something beyond themselves, tend to maintain function longer than those who lack this sense. Purpose organizes behavior. It provides motivation to make choices that support continued ability to engage in meaningful activities. This principle connects to all the others. People with strong social connections and clear purpose are more likely to move regularly, eat well, manage stress, and maintain healthy habits. They have reasons to take care of themselves. The reverse is also true. People who are isolated and lack purpose are more vulnerable to the neglect of health. For those in later decades, maintaining and building connections requires intentional effort. Friendships may need cultivation. Family relationships may need attention. Community involvement provides opportunities to meet people with shared interests. Even small interactions with neighbors, store clerks, or others in daily life contribute to a sense of belonging. Purpose does not have to be grand. It can be found in caring for a garden, helping with grandchildren, volunteering, creating art, or simply being present for others. What matters is that it feels genuine, that it provides a reason to engage with life. The seventh principle, environmental awareness. The environment in which you live shapes your health in ways that are easy to overlook. Air quality, water quality, noise levels, access to nature, and the design of your home all influence your physiology and behavior. Air pollution, even at levels considered acceptable by regulatory standards, contributes to inflammation and oxidative stress. Fine particles enter the bloodstream and affect blood vessels, lungs, and even the brain. Over years, this exposure accelerates aging. Simple measures like using appropriate air filters, avoiding time near heavy traffic, and paying attention to air quality alerts can reduce this burden. Noise pollution also matters. Chronic exposure to traffic, aircraft, or other loud sounds keeps the nervous system on alert. It disrupts sleep and elevates stress hormones. Seeking quiet spaces and using sound insulation or white noise to mask disruptive sounds supports nervous system recovery. Access to nature has documented health benefits. Time in green spaces reduces stress hormones, lowers blood pressure, and improves mood. Even viewing nature through windows has measurable effects. For people in urban environments, seeking out parks, gardens, or tree-lined streets provides these benefits. The home environment influences movement and safety. Stairs that are easy to navigate encourage their use. Showers with grab bars reduce fall risk. Good lighting prevents accidents. Simple modifications can make the difference between a home that supports independence and one that creates hazards. Light exposure affects circadian rhythms, the internal clock that regulates sleep and many other processes. Bright light during daytime, particularly morning light, helps anchor this clock. Dim light in evenings supports the transition to sleep. Managing light exposure is a low-cost, high-impact strategy for improving sleep and overall regulation. These environmental factors operate beneath awareness, but their cumulative effect is substantial. Optimizing the spaces where you spend time removes hidden burdens from your physiology. It allows your body to allocate resources to maintenance and repair rather than constant defense against environmental challenges. How the principles work together. The 7 principles described above are not separate. They interact constantly. Movement affects metabolism. Nutrition affects inflammation. Stress regulation affects social connection. Purpose affects all of these by motivating consistent choices. Understanding these interactions is useful because it means improvements in one area tend to support improvements in others. A person who begins walking regularly may find that their sleep improves, which reduces stress, which makes it easier to make good food choices, which supports metabolic health, which provides more energy for movement. The upward spiral benefits every system. The reverse is also true. Declines in one area tend to pull others down. Poor sleep increases stress, which drives cravings for unhealthy foods, which promotes weight gain, which reduces motivation to move, which further degrades sleep. The downward spiral is just as powerful as the upward one. This is why the concept of choosing well matters so much. Each choice you make sends a signal to your body about which direction you are heading. No single choice determines your trajectory, but the pattern of choices over time absolutely does. The person who consistently chooses whole foods over processed ones, movement over sitting, connection over isolation, and rest over constant stimulation is building a body designed for longevity. Not through dramatic interventions, but through the quiet accumulation of days lived well. Practical integration. Bringing principles into daily life. Understanding principles is valuable, but only when they translate into action. The challenge is not knowing what to do. It is doing it consistently over decades. This requires systems, not just intentions. One approach is to build choices into routines so they become automatic rather than requiring constant decision-making. If you always have a handful of walnuts with your morning oatmeal, you do not need to decide each day whether to eat walnuts. The routine makes the choice for you. Another approach is to shape your environment to support good choices. If nuts are stored in clear containers at eye level, you are more likely to reach for them than if they are buried in the back of a cabinet. If processed snacks are simply not present, you cannot eat them. Environment design is more reliable than willpower. The principle of substitution works better than the principle of elimination. Instead of focusing on what you should not eat, focus on what you could eat instead. Replace honey-roasted almonds with raw almonds. Replace salted peanuts with pistachios in their shells, where the act of shelling slows consumption. The positive focus feels less like deprivation and more like upgrading. Variety matters because it ensures you receive a range of nutrients and because it prevents boredom. Rotating between walnuts, almonds, pistachios, and hazelnuts provides different combinations of healthy fats, vitamins, and minerals. It also keeps eating interesting. Portion awareness remains essential. Even the healthiest foods become problematic in excess. Using small bowls rather than eating directly from large containers helps with portion control. Taking a moment to appreciate the food before eating slowly, and pausing between handfuls all support appropriate intake. For movement, integrating activity into daily life works better than trying to carve out separate exercise time. Taking stairs instead of elevators, parking farther from store entrances, gardening, walking while talking on the phone, these small movements accumulate throughout the day. For stress regulation, brief practices scattered through the day may be more sustainable than long sessions. A few deep breaths before meals, a short walk after lunch, a moment of gratitude before sleep. These micro-practices build a foundation of calm without requiring large time commitments. For connection, regular scheduled contact with important people ensures it happens. Weekly phone calls with distant family, standing lunch dates with friends, participation in groups that meet regularly. These create predictable opportunities for connection. For purpose, reflecting on what matters and how you want to spend your time provides direction. Purpose does not have to be discovered once and fixed forever. It evolves as you do. Regular reflection keeps it aligned with your current values and circumstances. The perspective of decades. One of the challenges in thinking about longevity is that the time horizon is long. Benefits that accumulate over years are hard to perceive in the moment. The person who chooses walnuts over honey-roasted almonds feels no immediate difference. The person who takes the stairs instead of the elevator notices nothing in that moment. But over decades, these differences compound. The person who consistently chose whole foods, moved regularly, managed stress, maintained connections, and shaped their environment for health arrives at age 80 with a body that still functions well. The person who made opposite choices arrives with accumulated damage. This is not about blame or judgment. Everyone makes choices that are not optimal. Life is complicated. Convenience, cost, availability, and countless other factors influence what people actually do. The point is simply to understand the relationship between daily choices and long-term outcomes. With that understanding, you can make adjustments where they matter most. You can focus your energy on the changes that will have the greatest impact given your current situation. You can recognize that every small choice in the right direction is a real gain, even if it feels insignificant in the moment. The body keeps recording. It does not judge. It simply responds to the signals it receives. Give it movement, and it maintains muscle and bone. Give it whole foods, and it maintains metabolic balance. Give it rest, and it repairs. give it connection, and it regulates stress. Over time, these responses accumulate into the body you will inhabit in the future. The question of quality. Longevity discussions often focus on length of life. How many years can you add? But for most people, the more important question is quality. What will those years be like? Will you be able to walk without pain? Think clearly. Engage with people you love. Pursue activities that matter to you. The strategies that support length also support quality. Movement preserves the ability to move. Good nutrition preserves mental clarity. Stress regulation preserves emotional balance. Connection preserves relationships. Purpose preserves motivation. The alternative is not just a shorter life, but a longer period of decline at the end. Many people spend their final years with limited mobility, diminished cognition, and dependence on others. This is not inevitable. It is largely determined by the cumulative effect of choices made throughout life. This is why choosing well matters. Not because death is optional, it is not, but because the path to death can be either a gradual decline or a maintained plateau followed by a relatively brief period of transition. The difference between these paths is measured in years of independent, engaged, meaningful life. That difference is worth pursuing, not through desperate measures or extreme protocols, but through the quiet consistency of daily choices that support the body's natural maintenance systems. Walnuts instead of honey-roasted almonds. Walking instead of sitting. Connection instead of isolation. Rest instead of constant stimulation. These choices seem small in isolation. In accumulation, they are everything. A broader view of nourishment. The discussion of nuts serves as a window into a larger truth. The same principles that distinguish helpful nuts from harmful ones apply to nearly every food. Whole forms nourish. Processed forms challenge. The closer a food is to its natural state, the more likely it is to support the body's systems. The more it has been modified, the more likely it is to create metabolic disturbances. But nourishment is broader than food. Movement nourishes the musculoskeletal system. Rest nourishes the nervous system. Connection nourishes the emotional and social aspects of being human. Purpose nourishes the drive to engage with life. Each of these forms of nourishment follows the same pattern. Consistent, moderate, varied input supports function. Excessive, insufficient, or distorted input creates problems. The Goldilocks principle applies to everything the body needs, not too little, not too much, but just right. This perspective shifts the focus from seeking optimal amounts of individual nutrients to seeking overall patterns that support balance. You do not need to calculate exact grams of omega-3s or precise minutes of exercise. You need to create a life in which movement, rest, connection, and whole foods are present in reasonable amounts on most days. The body knows what to do with these inputs. It has been managing them for the entire history of our species. It does not need perfect information or precise calculations. It needs the raw materials it evolved to expect, delivered in the patterns it evolved to handle. The quiet power of consistency. If there is a single message that emerges from all of this, it is that consistency matters more than intensity. The person who eats a handful of walnuts every day for 20 years will receive more benefit than the person who eats large amounts occasionally. The person who walks daily will maintain function better than the person who exercises intensely once a week. This is good news because consistency is accessible. You do not need special equipment, expensive memberships, or extraordinary willpower. You need only to make small choices repeatedly until they become habits. Once habits are established, they require minimal effort to maintain. The challenge is not in the difficulty of any individual choice. It is in the patience required to maintain them over decades. Modern culture emphasizes quick results and dramatic transformations. Longevity does not work that way. It works through the accumulation of ordinary days, each one contributing a small amount to the total. This is why the tone of this discussion has been calm rather than urgent. Urgency implies that something must be done immediately or disaster will follow. That is not the reality of aging. The reality is that every day offers opportunities to support your future self. Missing some of them does not doom you. Capturing most of them, most of the time, is enough. The body is remarkably resilient. It forgives many lapses. It responds to renewed effort at any age. People who improve their habits in their 60s, 70s, or 80s still experience benefits. The record the body keeps can always be updated with new entries. Conclusion: the art of choosing well is not about perfection. It is about direction. Each day, you have the opportunity to make choices that point your body toward better function or toward decline. Most people will make a mix of both. The goal is not to eliminate all choices that point the wrong way. The goal is to ensure that, over time, the balance tips in favor of health. This balance is shaped by understanding. When you know that walnuts support metabolic health while honey-roasted almonds challenge it, you can make an informed choice. When you know that movement signals the body to maintain muscle and bone, you can prioritize it. When you know that connection buffers stress, you can invest in relationships. Knowledge without action is merely interesting. Action without knowledge is guesswork. The combination of understanding and consistent application creates the conditions for healthy aging. The body you will inhabit in 10 years is being built today. Not dramatically, not through grand gestures, but through the quiet accumulation of ordinary choices. What you eat, how you move, whether you rest, who you connect with, what gives you purpose. All of these are the building materials from which your future will be constructed. Choosing well is simply the recognition that these materials matter. That walnuts are better building material than honey-roasted almonds. That walking is better than sitting. That connection is better than isolation. That rest is better than constant stimulation. These truths are not complicated. They are not hidden. They are available to anyone who pays attention. The challenge is not in knowing them. It is in living them, day after day, until they become the natural rhythm of a life. And that is the quiet work of longevity. Not dramatic transformation, but gentle consistency. Not perfection, but direction. Not intensity, but patience. Over years and decades, this approach yields the only result that truly matters. A body that still works, a mind that still engages, and a life that still feels worth living. The single most important truth that emerges from everything we have explored is this: the body you will inhabit in 10 years is being built by the choices you make today. Not dramatically or all at once, but quietly, consistently, one day at a time. Understanding this changes the relationship you have with each small decision. It transforms eating from a matter of taste into an act of creation. It turns movement from a chore into a conversation with your future self. It reframes rest and connection not as luxuries, but as essential maintenance for the only body you will ever have. If this perspective resonates with you, if it offers a new way of seeing the path ahead, we would be honored to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if you would like to continue exploring the wisdom of healthy aging, we invite you to explore other films in this library and to subscribe so that new insights find their way to you. This is the Longevity Library. Listen, learn, and live longer.